From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's P.I.D. Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
And I'm Sharon Gilbert. Welcome again to our barn. We are, this is actually take 2 for this podcast because, well, I'll tell you what. Here's a little story. Derek donated one of his old Mac setups to a friend of ours who's doing some editing for us. Mm-hmm. Love you, Josh. You are Joshua Dorlin. Mm-hmm. Wonderful man. I'll tell you, a man of God and a great editor.
Yeah.
Well, he needed a faster machine, so we donated that. So you're sitting there in front of a setup that's new.
Newer. Yes, had to swap the monitors, and there were some reconnections that needed to be made.
It was being crabby.
It was being crabby. I didn't notice that the record button wasn't on.
Oh,
Carl
needs
Gallups
that?
will never let me forget the time when I forgot to hit the record button, not once, but twice during the same interview. We had to record the same interview 3 times. This was years ago.
I remember that.
Carl will just bring that up. So now, you did hit the record button this time, right?
And this was early in our friendship with Carl. So now, we just go, I don't know, Carl. Sorry. Didn't work. See you later. No, we love Carl Gallups so much. In fact, Carl Gallups is the first guest on The Bible's Greatest Mysteries, which we hope to get. It's probably going to be October now. We had hoped to get it out in September. Derek and I we got a lot of pies going or whatever, plates spinning or pies baking.
We're juggling plates.
Yeah, juggling pies.
Spinning pies.
Eating pies. Pies. But anyway, that, and also my podcast, The Armored Sheep, will probably not be out until October because Derek is so wonderfully putting together the little bits and pieces he'll be using to edit it, like
intro,
the lower thirds and things like that. And I've just had to work with the lighting, and I will warn you in advance, just so you know, Bible's Greatest Mysteries and the Armored Sheep will only be available on YouTube and on our app. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have the app, please download it because that's the guaranteed place to find it. And the app is available in a lot of different formats. You can even watch it on your TV.
Yeah. Because not only do you get the iOS, Android, Amazon Kindle Fire version for mobile devices, which you can then use to cast the video from your phone or tablet to your TV, your smart TV.
You can throw it up there.
Yeah, just throw up and throw up the video.
We've been making people throw up since 2005.
Yes, 20 years of making people throw up using Google's Chromecast or Apple's AirPlay. But you can also download the Gilbert House Ministries app to Roku, Apple TV, and now it's in the Amazon Fire TV store.
Yeah, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
We've been everywhere since 2005 practically.
In fact, I keep forgetting to mention it, but also Android TV and Google TV.
Yes, exactly.
It's in all of those app stores now.
Just about anywhere you're going to watch content, we are there. But look, when it's someone else's playground, you can't expect us to be there forever. The app is run by a Christian company. We pay for it. Mm-hmm. Through your kind donations, we're able to do that. And so it makes, because many of you are supporting us financially as well as prayerfully, we are able to provide 20 years of content for free.
Right. So we've got archives going back in the classic PID radio section back to 2005. Mm-hmm. The View from the Bunker, the classic VFTB section goes back to 2009. The prophecy interviews section, we've got interviews that we conducted at prophecy conferences going back to 2011.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of deep content in there if you want to spend some time going through the archives. And that's all available on the app and the Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Google TV versions.
Just all over the place.
Yeah.
So, and we will, at the end of this session, we will be answering a couple of questions from the app, because you can also communicate with one another. You can pray for one another. You can form small groups and study. And you can ask us questions. And eventually there will be places in there for specific questions going to the Armored Sheep and also to the Bible's Greatest Mysteries. Right. And Armored Sheep, I have to warn you ahead of time, I'm sitting here, I should say, in a hat. Mm-hmm. And it's because my right eye is really light sensitive again today. Derek and I recorded programs at Skywatch TV yesterday, and anytime I do that, I'm wearing makeup, and it gets in my eye and really sets my whole recovery back about a week. Mm. So there may be some episodes of The Armored Sheep where you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if I'm ready for Sharon with no makeup on. This is sort of scary.
She's wearing sunglasses.
Sunglasses and a hat, and is she witness protection? Or is that the armor she's wearing? Sunglasses and a hat? But I want to make sure that I get it. And if I have to wait until I'm able to wear makeup consistently to do this, it'll never get done. So waiting for the Lord to heal me. Many of you are praying for me. I want to thank you for that. And those of you who are praying for my back that I threw out because of my foolishness, pushing a bookcase. It is getting slowly better. And as you know, I'm going to be 72 next month. And when you get older, the warranty wears out.
Yeah. It was my dad's expression after he turned 60. He said, the warranty expired. So between 60 and 69, when he passed, he had a detached retina that had to be put back into place. He described that process. It just made me go,
oh, well, yeah, I've actually seen that done. I've helped with that. So it is a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know many of you out there listening, you are dealing with the same things and probably stuff that's even worse. So we'll pray for one another.
Yes.
And share in the app. So
and that's really the benefit of the app as opposed to the TV versions for Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, because those apps don't facilitate the communication back and forth in the messaging section, the calendar of upcoming events, the Bible study, reading schedule, all of that's in the mobile app. So get both. Get your TV version and get the app version for your mobile device.
Have everything right there ready for you.
GilbertHouse.org/app. GilbertHouse.org/app.
If you've been watching the news, and I bet you have been because you guys are really, really smart. Boy, things are happening. Beginning with the pager. You want to tell the pager story in case this is new to our listeners?
Right. This broke on Tuesday morning. In fact, I was watching Avi Lipkin's Zoom call, which he produces every week from his home in... I
think he lives in... He doesn't live in Jerusalem now.
No. He's got... It's a small community down near the Dead Sea.
Yes.
It's... what is it? Kedar?
Well, anyway, he lives in that
small community near the Dead Sea. Anyway, he streams it live every Tuesday morning, 7:30 a.m. Central Time here in the U.S. So if you want to join, you can join his call and just get updates from Avi and what he's seeing on the ground there in Israel, which is...
Yeah, you don't have to participate if you don't want to, but if you want to hear what he has to say live, trust me, he has inside information.
He does. He's been a member. He worked in the Prime Minister's office years ago, and he says he was pushed out because he wasn't a socialist.
And he has many, many friends in government.
He's been politically active for a long time, trying to get the Bible Block Party off the ground. They're a unity party of Christians and Jews in Israel. And while he was doing this week, and by the way, they post it later to YouTube. So if you can't get up or if you got something else going on early Tuesday mornings, you can watch it later on YouTube.
That's where I watch it.
Yeah. Aaron Lipkin posts it to YouTube later. During the Zoom call, news began coming out that this was happening. So it was early Tuesday morning, our time. It was mid-afternoon, local time in Israel and Lebanon, that pagers all across Lebanon exploded simultaneously.
Not all pagers. These are pagers that were being used by Hezbollah.
Right. Hezbollah had sourced these pagers, encrypted pagers, about 5 months ago. And the reason they were going back to an older technology, I mean, here in the West, we don't use pagers anymore because we've got cell phones and we can text one another. But that kind of signals, those kind of signals can be scooped up by smart intelligence organizations like the Mossad.
Yes. So, but one of the sources that I read, and I think as I remember, I can't tell you what it was, mentioned that this action goes back 15 years.
Right. This has been a long game played by the Mossad, that they were working for 15 years to infiltrate the supply chain for Hezbollah. And when Hezbollah bought these pagers 5 months ago, from what they believed was a trusted source, they in fact were buying pagers that, according to stories that have come out since Tuesday, were not just intercepted and doctored by Mossad, where a small amount of PET, which is a very powerful explosive, were placed inside the pagers so that when the temperature of the batteries reached a critical point, they exploded. And whatever Mossad did, I don't know what kind of signal they sent to these pagers to cause the batteries to heat and explode.
But they did so simultaneously.
But they did so simultaneously, which suggests, and this was the story that's come out, not only, it's not that the Mossad intercepted pagers that had been previously constructed. It appears that the Mossad was running a shell company that actually manufactured the pagers from the ground up.
Exactly.
So that they didn't have to try to heat the batteries to a certain point, create a feedback loop or whatever that caused the pager to work hard. They sent a signal that just triggered the explosive.
Yes, that's my understanding as well.
And the way they exploded, reportedly, was that the pagers beeped several times, meaning that the person who owned the pager would be likely to take the pager off his belt clip or whatever and hold it up to see what the message was. Mm-hmm. So you've got hundreds of Hezbollah operatives that are now reportedly blinded because these exploded. I read one report that suggested not only were they doctored with the explosive, but ball bearings had been put in there too to maximize damage. So this is kind of a nasty device.
Bear in mind, these are terrorists.
Yeah.
I personally, I really am a pacifist when it comes to injuring other people. But if someone is harming your family over and over again, these are the people that killed 12 Druze children who were just playing on a ball field. Right.
The rocket that landed on the soccer field and killed 12 children in northern Israel just a couple of months ago. Hezbollah, since the beginning of this war, I mean, not all time, we're just saying since last October, so for just within the last 12 months, they've launched more than 8,500 rockets and explosive-laden drones into northern Israel. And the world sort of expects Israel to just say, well, you should just take it. I mean, look, this landing in open fields. Okay, it's caused a fire. Okay, it hit a house, it damaged a house. Insurance will cover that. Just
okay. It's pretty much, flattened Metula, but
yeah. Yeah, deal with it. Deal with it. You're Jews, you're Israelis. But then when they respond, then the world comes out and condemns Israel. As we've seen, the United Nations this week passed a resolution in the UN General Assembly calling for Israel to withdraw from the pre-1967 borders within a year. And my response on X, formerly Twitter, this week was, when I saw that story, was, yeah, that's not happening.
No, never.
And it's not. Avi Lipkin, when he spoke to our group for our solidarity mission back in the spring, and God bless him, he was willing to come from his home up to Jerusalem to address a group of 9 people.
To talk to us.
Yeah, 9 people. He pointed out, and he showed us on a map, that the pre-1967 borders, at its narrowest point, is only 9 miles between the border and the Mediterranean. It is an indefensible position. What I learned when I researched my presentation for the Go Therefore conference in July is that that border was what was finally offered to the Zionist movement by the United Nations in 1947, after the League of Nations in 1922 promised Israel everything west of the Jordan River. So this so-called West Bank, which Israel calls Judea and Samaria, had been taken away and given back to the Arabs because the Arabs in the 1920s began launching terror attacks against the British police and troops who were there keeping the peace, against Jewish settlers.
And because the Western companies wanted to assure that they had access to Arab oil.
Arab oil, right. After 1930, when oil was discovered in Bahrain and Kuwait and then Arabia, suddenly you had British Petroleum, you had Texaco, Mobil, Standard of California, Standard of New Jersey getting involved, and a lot of money flowing back to the United States and the United Kingdom because of their partnership with King Ibn Saud of Saudi Arabia and other Arab oil sheikhs in the Middle East. The Jews had no oil, so they had no leverage with the West. So when the Arabs began rebelling in 1936 under the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who had to flee because the Brits wanted to arrest him to put down this Arab rebellion that was going on, he fled to Germany and became buddies with Adolf Hitler and began broadcasting propaganda back into Palestine in Arabic. He helped Heinrich Himmler recruit 3 divisions of Waffen-SS, mostly Muslim troops in Bosnia.
That's why the Muslim Brotherhood has the same salute that the Nazis did.
And so does Hezbollah, so does Hamas, so does the PLO. This all is history that's been sort of swept under the rug. I mean, basically, when you use the word Islamofascism, it is not just a pejorative term. It is accurate. It is historically accurate. Hajj Amin al-Husseini was so important to the National Socialists in Germany that he was getting paid 50,000 marks a month.
That's a lot.
The German field marshals, like the famous Erwin Rommel, who led, the Desert Fox, who led the German attack, German conquest of North Africa. German field marshals, their top military commanders, were getting 20,000 marks a year. And al-Husseini was getting 50,000 a month. That's how important he was to what was going on in Hitler's mind. So and he's the, I'm going to have to look, but he's related to Yasser Arafat, like a great uncle or something. I'll have to look that up. But anyway, it's really bizarre. But all of this is history that has been swept under the rug. And so today Israel is still being held to account for things that it didn't do. And they're wanting Israel to return to these borders that were imposed on Israel by the UN in 1947.
Yes.
Indefensible borders.
And getting back to the pager story, the following day, the radios started blowing up.
Right. After the first day where they had, it was more than 2,800 injured and I think a dozen killed.
So there was one radio that exploded at a funeral.
The next day, the radios began exploding. Walkie-talkies. Again, a low-tech communication device.
That had been sold to Hezbollah.
Right. Because the walkie-talkies were bigger, they were able to carry more explosives. So you had another, I think the death toll, the last one I saw was like 37 dead and more than 3,000 injured. So
this was about far more than just injuring terrorists. This was about taking down a communications network.
Yeah.
So with the comms down, within the next couple of days, the IAF, the Israel Air Force, they began going in and taking out strategic sites where rockets were being launched and rockets were being created, manufactured. And that is so that they can. One of the sites they took out had 100 silos in it. 100 silos.
Yeah, with 1,000 launch tubes.
Yeah.
And they were being readied for launch. Again, this was like the previous strike a couple of weekends ago, where they took out, just before they launched, several thousand rockets that had been readied for launch against Israel. The attack on the airstrikes in Beirut on Friday, Friday afternoon local time, killed Ibrahim Akil, who's the chief of the elite Radwan unit of Hezbollah.
That was big.
But 10 commanders of the paramilitary group were taken out in all. So this was my question on as early as Tuesday. Would Israel follow up the disruption of the command structure of Hezbollah with a ground attack? Because they had disrupted communications. First of all, they're not using cell phones because they know that Mossad can intercept those signals. So they went to an older form of communications that was not as easily intercepted. All those pagers blew up. The next day, the walkie-talkies that they were depending on for communication, again.
So they now have rotary phones on their belts.
Yeah, that was one of the memes.
I know.
That has been floating around the web. So they've disrupted communications amongst Hezbollah. And yes, they inflicted a blow on Hezbollah with this attack. But it would seem to me, and bear in mind, I'm not a military expert. I just read a lot. I've got pretty good reading comprehension, but I'm not a strategist. I do not understand, okay. It would seem to me that now if Israel was going to follow with a ground offensive in southern Lebanon to push Hezbollah back away from the borders so that Israelis can return to their homes, because there's still more than 60,000 Israelis who have been displaced from their homes in the north. Many of them are being put up at government expense in hotels. Others have finally just gotten sick of it and they've rented apartments. They're living with relatives in the southern part of the country. This is not sustainable.
No.
You've got major cities like Kiryat Shimona that are basically ghost towns right now.
No, but adding to this, in the wake of all of the pagers and the radios going off, Nasrallah gave a speech. And as he was speaking, by the way, some of the radios went off. But Iran
that's when Israel was launching the airstrikes.
Oh, that's right. Iran has claimed, and I say claimed because Iran talks a lot, but doesn't really follow up all the time. Iran has been claiming that they would now join in to avenge the deaths of the operatives in Lebanon. I think we may well see that happen in the next couple of weeks. Is it going to happen this weekend? I don't know, but I will tell you October 2nd is 2nd and 3rd is Rosh Hashanah. It is the beginning of High Holy Days over there, which means that it's a time when Jews are more reflective and they stay at home more, and they often get leave from the military. That's one of the reasons October 7 was such a prime time for that attack, because a lot of soldiers had been given leave to go home. A lot of people were simply with their families. Even if you were a police officer, you may have taken the weekend off or whatever. But we are heading up also to the anniversary of October 7. Israel is surrounded by enemies. Does this sound biblically familiar?
Yeah.
It should.
And I would suggest that in itself is a clue that this is not fake Israel, that this Israel is the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, because the enemy, and I mean capital E enemy, principalities and powers and rulers over this, cosmic darkness, cosmic rulers over this present darkness, are trying so hard to destroy Israel. If this was a fake Israel intended to draw Christians in, wouldn't we see a deception that would, Christians, you're welcome, come on over, everything is fine, and it would try to make it appear as though this more.
Yes, or if, say, the United States or Great Britain or some other location were true Israel, which is some of the stuff I hear in this replacement theology, wouldn't we be surrounded by enemies on all sides? But does it make any sense that when you take a look at the named tribes that are going after Israel in prophecy, they are Persia. They are from the north, from the Anatolian region. They're in Egypt. They're from the south, where you see the Yemen. There are parts of the African, the Horn of Africa area, that enemies on all sides. Essentially, the tribes that are named give you all cardinal directions.
Yes.
Israel is surrounded by enemies.
And you're talking about Ezekiel 38.
Yes, it's exactly what we're seeing now. And I would encourage those of you who love to study Ezekiel 38 and 39, back up and go all the way back to 34, 35. Get context for what all of this is.
Right.
Because you'll start to see judgments against Idumea.
Yep.
And that's always a surprise, because Petra's in that region. And we always think Petra is going to be safe, but maybe not.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this on Unraveling Revelation. I wrote about this in Last Clash of the Titans, and also Bad Moon Rising, which is the book about Islam, and suggested that Psalm 83 may be what we're seeing as a prelude, but it will be presented, as you've pointed out, as a false Ezekiel 38, 39 Gog-Magog conflict.
Fake Armageddon.
Right. Psalm 83 reads, O God, do not keep silence. Do not hold your peace or be still, O God, for behold, your enemies make an uproar. Those who hate you have raised their heads. They lay crafty plans against your people. They consult together against your treasured ones. They say, come, let us wipe them out as a nation. Let the name of Israel be remembered no more. From the river to the sea. Yeah. And remember, in Arabic, that phrase concludes with Palestine shall be Arab, is what it says.
And that is exactly what it says. That phrase essentially is calling for genocide.
Genocide. And that's what we see here in Psalm 83. For they conspire against you with one accord. Against you they make a covenant. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites. All right. Jordan, the Ishmaelites, the Bedouin of the Negev, Moab and the Hagrites. Again, Moab, Jordan, the Hagrites, the Egyptians. Giv'al and Ammon and Amalek. Giv'al is a city in ancient Lebanon, so we're talking Hezbollah there. Ammon, again, the nation of Jordan. Amalek, again, the Negev and the Sinai. Philistia, Gaza, Hamas, and the inhabitants of Tyre. Ashur also has joined them.
Tyre gets up into Lebanon as well.
Yep, Ashur being Syria and Iraq. They are the strong arm of the children of Lot, Selah. So this would be the Psalm 83 war that Bill Salas has written about. And what this shows is a coalition of Israel's nearby neighbors conspiring to try to wipe out Israel. Are we seeing that fulfilled right now? Possibly. We won't know for sure until we're past it and we can look back on it. But if this is the prelude to something bigger, as you've suggested, assuming that Israel is victorious, and we assume it will be because God's on Israel's side, and this is not to defend the geopolitical state. This is not because of the righteousness of the people of Israel. God has just said, look, I've made this promise to the descendants.
And it's unconditional.
And it's unconditional. And we see in Zechariah 12 and Zechariah 12, 1 through 10, Zechariah 13, 1, that they don't recognize the true identity of Messiah until that day, which is the phrase in the Old Testament, meaning the day of Armageddon.
When God, him whom they have pierced.
Right. They will look on me, on him whom they have pierced, and mourn.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't recognize him yet. We get that. That doesn't mean that Israel is not the fulfillment of God's prophecy.
Exactly. Israel in the Old Testament was not perfect. Israel today is not perfect.
Exactly. But it's about the land. God has chosen Zion as his dwelling place, and that's why the enemy wants it. This is a fight for the Mount of Assembly.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to have to take a break, and I would challenge you to go get a little salad dressing over the break, because you're going to need it for the word salad spun by a certain presidential candidate.
More P.I.D. radio straight ahead. It's time for back to school, and we have a special offer in September at the Gilbert House store.
Back to school, it's impossible to believe. Where did the year go? Well, October is also approaching, so we have a deal for you. $35 only plus shipping and handling will get you 2 amazing books and a CD, which is interviews with Dr. Michael Heiser.
Preparing you for All Hallows Eve, the month of October, when we begin to think about the spirit realm, our book Veneration, which takes a deep dive into the cult of the Nephilim around ancient Israel, the source of the demons that plague the world to this day.
And also a wonderful book by our friend Vicki Joy Anderson, They Only Come Out at Night. This is your manual for spiritual warfare. This should be in your church library.
Those 2 books plus a 7-hour audio CD with Dr. Michael S. Heiser discussing the unseen realm. These 2 books plus the CD, just $35 plus shipping and handling only at gilberthouse.org/store. Welcome back to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we want to, just in case you have missed the announcement, we will not be going to Israel in November. The Solidarity Tour that we had planned on taking, we have sadly had to cancel, primarily because we didn't have the number, but we understand why everybody is a little shy about signing up because of the geopolitics going on over there right now. It's a little uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you may not be involved in any kind of an action, but you might also not be able to get your plane ride home.
Yeah, number of Delta Airlines this week announced it's canceling all flights to Tel Aviv through the end of this year.
Well, exactly, because if war on the ground breaks out, that whole section from Tel Aviv on up could be really tricky, and flying in becomes problematic if missiles are in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to, and getting pilots who are willing to do it.
Well,
many of them simply will not fly.
Yeah, back in May, in fact, that was the reason we stopped in Cyprus. We changed out the cruise. We were on Cyprus for the island for 30 minutes.
Long enough to change out the...
Yeah, they said officially it was to refuel. Like,
no.
Well, you're telling me you can't go from Frankfurt, Germany to Tel Aviv in one hop?
Yeah, you
no,
can.
They changed out the crew.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And part of that may have been for security reasons for Israel. But yeah,
could be.
There are a lot of places that, or airlines rather, that do not want to fly there. Well, if you got your... quickly though, we will be going there next spring.
Yes.
That is still on. Now, if, say, in the next month, if 30 days from now it looks like we still have war or the chance of war, we'll have to revisit that with Lipkin Tours and decide what to do.
Right.
But I did tell you before the break, I warned you, get some salad dressing because the salad spinner she's out. And she had an interview with Oprah Winfrey.
Interview in name only.
And it did her no good whatsoever.
No, it was really interesting that the people who threw questions at her made a point of saying, what specific steps would you take to secure the border? What specifically will you do to lower the cost of living?
Mm-hmm.
And after spinning her wheels for a while on the cost of living question, she finally said, yeah, we understand that, blah, 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 blah. It will lower the price of groceries and lower the price of yes, but
she
how?
even said, she essentially said on day one, I'm going to do the following thing. I'm going to sign this bill that the Republicans didn't want signed.
Regarding the border.
Yeah, exactly. That was the question about securing the border.
Right.
But we watched this wonderful body language analysis. We've recommended Jesus Enrique Rosas before. He is an amazing guy. He's so funny. He's from Venezuela. He lives elsewhere now. He understands fascism. He understands how language can be weaponized.
Right. He's seen it in his own country.
And he also understands voting fraud. So he's from a country that all of that happened, and he sees it happening in the United States and in England, and he is a little concerned about it, but he was looking at this interview and making comments. I got to tell you, it is precious. You so have to watch it. But when she was going on and on about, we live in America, and we're Americans. And as Americans in America, we love American values. What?
Every time she speaks, she comes across like a high school kid who didn't read the assigned homework. Can you please summarize the chapter
War and
from
Peace.
the chapter of Chaucer's whatever that the book titled War and Peace is about war and peace.
And peace. And they don't like the war. The guy who wrote it, he's a Russian guy who wrote it, and Russia didn't like war, and the Russians, being Russian people, have a love of peace. Yeah, it was that kind of stuff. So and in fact, she was asked about gun ownership and the gun violence in the United States, and her answer was something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing, but you need to watch it. Well, I have a gun at my place, my home, she says to Oprah.
She said, I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun owner.
And if somebody comes in, breaks into my house, I guarantee there'll be SHOT.
Yeah.
And Oprah's face.
She was stunned. Yeah, she was shocked. Like, what did you just
say the quiet part out loud?
Yeah. Because this was not a response that you would expect, that you would want to present to a predominantly liberal
right. The reason
audience.
I spelled it out, by the way, is
right.
just
So
in
it
case.
didn't get,
It's
algorithm.
really weird. This is why we say download our app, because we don't have those algorithms in our app. We'll get to say what we feel we need to say. You'll get to say what you feel you need to say when you want to ask questions or make comments. But yeah, even I've noticed that even in your comment section that they'll be removed if you have any of those words in
it. Yeah. So it was Oprah kept throwing her lifelines. So after she spun her wheels and just dug herself deeper into the hole on how this was we want a secure border, and we had a bill, and the Republicans, and who torpedoed the bill was Donald Trump, calling us. Yeah, except that the bill was mainly about sending hundreds of billions of dollars overseas. It was like $60 billion for Ukraine, $30 billion for.
Yes, but I'm raising my hand because yes, there was a ton of pork in it. But why is it that a former president from a different party has more power than a sitting president? Well,
that's it. President Trump, with executive orders, got money allocated and raw materials secured, steel and concrete, to build a border wall, which on day one, President Biden, with executive orders, stopped construction of, allowing that steel to just sit out there and rust.
Exactly.
And they finally sold it off for scrap.
Yeah, which is tragic. What a waste of money at the very least.
Yeah.
So when she says on day one, I will do the following, can you explain to me, A, why you and Biden did not do those things on day one, if that's what you both think, or at the very least did you have no input whatsoever? So you've been just a name only. And you've been the border czar. Have you? No. She says, no, I haven't. But the other thing that I find so interesting, and I just lost my thought. Let me think, what was it that I had? I had a bee in there somewhere. a little bee buzzing around my head.
Word salad.
Yeah,
spinning,
word salad, spinning.
Border.
Oh, I know what it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I have my thinking hat back on.
Good.
And Jill Biden apparently led a cabinet meeting.
This was really startling.
Jill Biden.
Yeah, because this was the first cabinet meeting that Joe Biden has held in a year.
Shouldn't that have been Harris? If you're going to have someone sitting in for the president because maybe he's just not capable that day, shouldn't it have been the vice president?
Well, yeah, but she's busy out campaigning.
That's my point.
Yeah. Why was Jill Biden there?
Jill wasn't elected anything.
No, that's a very good point. Joe Biden essentially started the meeting and then turned it over to Jill, and she spent most of the time just kind of talking about women's health, which, is a euphemism for other things. But yes, and this is bizarre because it was the first cabinet meeting that Biden has called in a year.
And he wasn't there.
And well, he was there. But again, he turned the meeting over to Jill and he didn't really do anything.
I'll say again, he wasn't there. Physically, maybe, but he wasn't there.
Well, no, Joe Biden has not been there mentally.
There's no one in there right now.
And we've seen that sadly exacerbated over the past 3 years.
I still think it's elder abuse. I really do.
I agree completely.
But I'll tell you.
What's really astonishing is how, with the exception of this friendly interview with Oprah.
Friendly.
Yeah. Oprah looked almost embarrassed for, when you again, reading the body language, when Harris was going through the word salad, Oprah sat back and put her hand up to her face, like
had the Oprah shock face on.
Oh my goodness. Harris has adopted the same campaign strategy that Joe Biden had in 2020, which is hide from the press. But she doesn't have the pandemic.
She doesn't have lockdown
or age to excuse it. Even Tim Walz, who traditionally, during his time as the governor of Minnesota, has not been shy about talking to the press. He apparently has been muzzled because he's not speaking to the press either. What's really bizarre, this is one of the strangest things of this presidential campaign, which is one of the most bizarre in our lifetimes, if not in American history, is that for the most part, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, the corporate media is pretending that this is all normal.
Yeah.
That you've got a candidate, and one of the exceptions was this week, Axios, which is a left-leaning news site, ran a report showing that Harris and Walz are on track to become the presidential ticket that has talked to the press fewer times than any presidential candidates in American history. And they showed the comparison between Harris and Walz and Trump and Vance. Trump and Vance, they're sitting down like almost daily with somebody and talking to some, especially Vance. Vance is doing a lot of work, doing a lot of interviews.
What I see from Tim Walz are things posted to Instagram where he's doing a selfie. Hey, I'm in a meeting.
Yeah, got my hair cut, got my cabinet going.
Dude, you don't have any hair.
Yeah. But for the most part, Harris is avoiding the press, and she's been told to, clearly. And most of the media is like, well, this is a pretty savvy strategy. They're running on vibe rather than on policy. And when she does come out with policies, they are complete reversals of policies that she previously ran on.
Running on vibe, joy. It's all joy.
Right.
No, trust me, if she gets into the White House, it will continue to be word salad and avoidance. And it means that the deep state gets to run things.
Well, the deep state is backing her. We've seen a number of Republicans in name only who have endorsed her as opposed to Donald Trump because she is more easily controlled. Yeah. They want to continue the never-ending war in Ukraine. They want to continue
because there's money to be made.
Well, exactly. I mean, Donald Trump is a threat to the multi-billion-dollar, even multi-trillion-dollar gravy train of wealth being transferred from American taxpayers to the military intelligence complex. By ending the war in Ukraine, by making peace with Russia, by calming the situation, suddenly, okay, we don't need to spend so much money making rockets and ammunition and so forth, which cuts into bottom lines. It harms shareholder value. And that is, you cannot underestimate that. This is why Dwight Eisenhower, who knew the inside of the military-industrial complex very well, warned about this during his farewell speech in 1960.
If you have not seen that speech, it's on YouTube. You can go watch it.
Yeah. We used to use that as part of the introduction for just that little audio bite as part of the intro to P.I.D. radio. Yeah. Because this is what we're seeing here. Harris is an empty suit like Barack Obama was an empty suit. It's just Obama is better at thinking on his feet than Harris is.
By the way, the very same day that the Oprah interview aired, J-Lo decided to endorse Harris. And I'm not sure that that's really going to help Harris's votership to increase, because J-Lo's been associated with a certain Mr. Combs, who was just recently arrested.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. There's a book out about all of that. I don't know if you've been looking at any of the stories regarding the book. I haven't read the book, but I've seen some of the stories. And if the insider who wrote this book is accurate, some of those parties included a lot of well-known celebrities. Yeah. A lot of them. And he produced a lot of music. So he had access to, look, my understanding is that he did more than just have parties.
Oh, yeah.
He also recorded them.
Well, in a sense, he's been referred to as the Black Epstein.
Yeah. I didn't want to use the name. Yeah. Because that's one of those names that gets you kicked off.
I know. But I think to make it
clear. The Black Mystery E. And many of his staff members are probably going to end up in jail.
Probably.
Because they didn't say no to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the police have found... No, I'm not going to go there.
No, don't even go there. Look, there's just a lot of evidence that indicates nefarious things were going on. Right. And I'm really glad to see that law enforcement is going after this, because this is reprehensible. If all of these rumors, if these stories are true, then he needs to be held responsible. Right. But it's just the tip of the iceberg. I suspect that this is very common in music and in television and in film. Parents, don't let your kids grow up to be in show business. No. Because if you want to become a celebrity, there is a price to be paid. Yeah. A spiritual price to be paid. Spiritual price, right. A couple of other stories to talk about, and I do want to circle back on... Circle back. Yeah, circle back. Yeah, we miss Jen Psaki. Not really. To a couple of other aspects of the Israel story, because there are a couple of things to mention that I think are really significant. Mm-hmm. But I also want to talk about the strange... Joe just managed to get through. How does he do that? How does he break through the do not disturb? Nobody knows. Don't know. The debate between Trump and Harris resulted in a lot of mockery directed at President Trump for saying they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. We talked about that in last week's program. But it did bring to light a situation in Springfield, Ohio. But it turns out now that there are other communities involved in this. It's not so much about the Haitian migrants and whether they're abducting people's pets. It's that there appears to be an organized trafficking network that is bringing Haitians who are in the country in Florida to small Midwestern communities to work as cheap labor in big factories. Right. And Springfield, Ohio is just one of those. Charleroi, Pennsylvania is another. In fact, this was discovered by a former Wall Street Journal reporter who went to Springfield to chase down the pets story and discovered a company there run by a guy named George Tenn, who is locally called King George because he's made so much money running unmarked white vans down to Florida, picking them up in Florida and driving them up to Ohio, where there were, and then dumping them in Ohio. I think it's in other cities too. I don't think it's just Ohio. No. Again, Charleroi, Pennsylvania is another case, and this was a story that was published at Zero Hedge, which is one of the sites I look to, but they kind of aggregate news from a number of sources, so it's not they're not doing original reporting. Mm. But this human trafficking network that was running Haitians from Florida up to Springfield. There's another that was in Charleroi, which is just south of Pittsburgh, where a murder for hire scheme from 2 years ago suddenly appears to be part of this human trafficking network for cheap labor. There was a guy in Pennsylvania named Kevin Van Lam who ordered and financed a hit on a man whom he'd paid $800,000 to buy a human resources company, a staffing company that controlled about 500 temporary workers
at a meatpacking company in Charleroi. So this guy paid $800,000, bought this company, running Haitian migrants to this company that was using the Haitians, working for cheap. And then the guy from whom he'd bought the company, who was working as an HR guy for the meatpacking company, set up another company and was taking the workers whom he'd previously been running on the company that he just sold for $800,000.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy who bought the company paid a hitman and had the first guy whacked. And prosecutors didn't know what to make of it at first. It's like, okay, this is really kind of weird. But now it appears that this was a fight over control over these migrants whose labor is being exploited. What we're seeing suddenly uncovered by Trump's remarks at the debate is a network, perhaps with the knowledge of some inside the federal government, but certainly with the knowledge of certain non-government organizations, NGOs, not-for-profits, bringing these Haitians in, where the Haitians, as Kamala Harris proudly bragged, were here on temporary protected status, which allowed them to circumvent the normal vetting for migrants coming into the country and seeking asylum.
Yeah, well, one day their descendants are going to demand reparations from the Harris administration.
Yeah, so it's a sad situation on a couple of levels. First of all, the people who are being exploited, the former Wall Street Journal reporter noted the story of one guy that she had interviewed who'd been dumped in a seedy part of Springfield and wound up living in a house with no working heat. He used some of his $12.50 an hour wages to buy a space heater to try to heat the room to get through winters in Ohio, which can be kind of cold, especially if you're from Haiti and you're not used to that kind of cold.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is a really ugly story because not only are they being exploited, but the American workers in Rust Belt towns that have been hollowed out by the shipping of our manufacturing base to China, where you've got a lot of guys who are just addicted to opiates or alcohol because they don't see any future. There's no jobs here anymore. What do we do? This is a really ugly story, and this is something that needs to be addressed.
And I think it is just now starting to come out. So let's just pray that the Lord, seriously, I have compassion for these people. They come from a country where their cultural context is entirely different from ours. They come here, they do not speak English. They are at the mercy of whatever gang or employer decides to take advantage of them.
Right.
Either way, it's not going to be a good situation. So pray for all of these. Pray that they might actually find Christ while they're here. Wouldn't that be wonderful? We need to get to the questions.
Well, a couple of other things very quickly. I just want to talk about Israel and the United Nations vote. UN voted this week to demand that Israel withdraw to those pre-1967 borders within a year.
Yes.
Ain't going to happen. Israel will never let that happen. But Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has said Saudi Arabia will now not recognize Israel because they still officially don't recognize Israel as existing, 75 years on.
Oh, that's hilarious because he said that he was going to have to get Israel's permission in order to build Noam.
Yeah, well...
his little city...
The question
is in his imagination.
Yeah, so he's saying that they won't recognize Israel without a Palestinian state. And of course, that's not going to happen either.
They wouldn't know.
No, Israel is not going to allow an independent, especially since last October 7th. The polls that have been taken since then showed a massive shift among the Israeli population. Israeli Jews, who make up 70% of the population of Israel, were almost evenly split prior to last October on whether or not a two-state solution would work. Now it's like 80% of Israelis say, no, there will never be a Palestinian state. So thanks to Hamas, Israel is now dead set against it. The world can say what it wants. Israel will not allow it to happen. But that, I think, is where we get to the kernel of the evil fruit, which will, when the Antichrist leads the world against Israel. We're going to force you to, I think that's how we're going to get there. So anyway, MBS, whether he's
I didn't realize you had a list. I never have a list.
Well, yeah.
Remember back in the day when you had a long list and
It wasn't just a list. It was a spreadsheet. Okay, here, and then we'll do it here. Now I just have a list, and we'll get to it in whatever order we get to it. But just to remind me not to forget to talk about certain things. So we got the UN vote in there. We got MBS in there, and we got all the other stuff in there. So now, yes, a couple of questions.
While you're looking for the question, I just want to remind everybody a couple of things that I've got 2 more novels that are at Amazon right now, and we have them here in Gilbert House Store. Go to gilberthouse.org/store. You can see The Armageddon Strain and Winds of Evil are both in our store now, so you can purchase those if you want. There will be specials on those, probably in December. Also, the brand new nonfiction book that Derek and I wrote, spent a lot of time on. I took time away from other things, as did Derek, so that we could get that done. The Gates of Hell is at Amazon. There's 1 review there, and it's not nice.
Yeah.
So if you have read it, listen to it. I haven't heard the audio version, and we didn't record it, so I can't really speak to that, but I can speak to the print version and possibly the Kindle version if it's out. It came out earlier. It wasn't supposed to come out until October 15th. Right. Which is why we haven't talked about it. But if you have read it, please give it a review, because we hate to see one person direct all of the ideas of what the book is about. Because
they used to do this. They used to do Tom Horn every time. Yeah. Tom Horn's got a new book out. Let's review bomb it. So again, 1 review is not a review bombing, but and
I think they have it at the Skywatch TV store too. I think.
Not sure about that.
Yeah. I saw 1 copy in the green room.
This coming week, we're going to see if we can get copies and add it to our store. Yeah. And if so, then
if they've got them, we'll get some. So anyway, there's that. So please go to gilberthouse.org/store. Because Vicki Joy Anderson has a special in our store.
She does, yes. And you don't want to miss that, because her book, They Only Come Out at Night, is really, really important.
You need it. Your friends need it. Your pastor needs that book.
Absolutely. I got another story to flag, but we'll hold that for next week. The Vatican actually speaking nice things about the visions at Medjugorje.
Oh, no, that's too big a topic.
Too big a topic. Okay. Let's see. Don't
give last names.
From Nancy. No, I'm not.
Hi, Nancy.
This. Yeah. I have this question for Sharon. In my study on the Hippocratic Oath and the church in Pergamon, are those same entities, Apollo, Asclepius, and Hygeia Panacea, etc., still controlling modern-day medicine and surgical procedures?
Well, I think that's a really good question. I don't know if those entities in particular are controlling surgical procedures. I think that our Lord is the healer, and I think that we can ask Him to control those surgical procedures. There was a time, if you're not familiar with this, the Asclepion, which was the temple to Asclepius, and I think Hygeia was his daughter, one of his children.
Yeah,
and
where we get the word hygiene.
Hygiene, exactly. Yeah. You would go in there, you would tell the priests, okay, here's what I've got going on, and the priest would give you an hallucinogenic, and then you would go down into a lower level and lie down. You would allow the dreams to come on you while the snakes crawled all over you, and you would then come and tell the priests what your visions were, what your dreams were, and they would say then, okay, this is what you need to take. Now, does that sound like modern day surgery? No.
Or medicine.
It doesn't really sound like modern day medicine either. I mean, modern day medicine isn't, I'm going to give you hallucinogenic, you're going to have a dream and come back. That's a little bit too psychic for me. But when you actually, having studied medicine myself, having studied the body, having, taken physiology and anatomy courses, having, actually participated in many dissections, you learn what the body actually looks like. Here's what I think is terribly sad about today's state of surgery. You and I were talking with some people yesterday at lunch about this. There are far too many stories coming out about surgeons that are so busy and so tired that they either are working off the wrong records for the patient, or they simply don't know anatomy well enough to do a good job because wrong organs are being removed.
Yep.
When you go in to remove a spleen, which you can live without, and you take out the liver, which is on the other side, and you can't live without it, that kills your patient. So yeah, when you go in, you want to have a really good surgeon. I've had a couple of surgeries in my life, and they were both done by top-notch surgeons. So for that, I'm very grateful.
My dad once said something I thought was really astute. He had, angioplasty. Mm-hmm. He had a heart attack in his mid-50s. And God bless him, he changed his diet, began exercising, and didn't have any more heart issues until he passed. His actual cause of death had nothing to do with his heart. But he said, they describe this procedure as routine, but a routine procedure is one that's happening to somebody else.
It is. That is so true. So that's a great question. Yes, I do think the spirit realm get involved in all aspects of our lives, but we don't have to allow that.
Yeah.
Yet another reason to read Vicki Joy Anderson's book.
Amen. Got a question from Bob.
Hi, Bob.
And this is one that I'll probably need to post a response in the app as well, because there's a link to an article or two that will answer this question in more depth. Bob asks, Derek, I'd like to hear or read a point-by-point discussion of why you disagree with Bob Cornuke's hypothesis that the actual Temple Mount is not located where the Dome of the Rock now stands. I believe you could do that in a brotherly fashion without disparaging anyone personally.
Okay, so Cornuke believes it's elsewhere, not where the Dome of the Rock is.
Right, City of David, yeah.
Yeah, he's not alone. There are others who think that.
Yeah, I know. Chuck Missler had subscribed to that theory. Mm-hmm. His arguments make a lot of sense, yet I've heard you mention several times that you disagree. And I will say, I've interviewed Bob, and we got along fine. I have no problem with him as a person.
And we've talked with Chuck, the late Chuck, who's with Jesus.
I'm sure you also have very logical reasons for your view. I'd be very interested to learn what they are. Perhaps you could post an article in the articles section of the app. Thank you. I will post a link. There are others who have taken issue with this and really done a deep dive into it. We've not. That's not really been an area that we've chosen to focus. But for me, the big thing was the description of the temple by Josephus, who lived when the temple still stood. Josephus was a commander in the rebellious Jewish armies in the Jewish revolt, year 67 AD. The temple wasn't destroyed until 70, so presumably Josephus, a Pharisee, was personally familiar with the temple and the Temple Mount, which had been expanded by Herod the Great. He expanded the Western Wall is not part of the temple. The Western Wall was part of the platform that Herod used to make the Temple Mount bigger. Okay.
Yeah, he put his stamp on it.
Right. So the Temple Mount is like 37 acres right now, but it wasn't that big when he started work on it back in the last decade of the first century BC. So according to Josephus, and I'm looking now to see if I can find, according to Josephus, each side of the temple enclosure was the length of a stade, which is between 585 and 660 feet. That is larger than the width of the city of David, which means that if the Temple Mount had been where the city of David is now located, it would be extending out over the Kidron Valley. And obviously that's just not how you build things. So that is the main thing for me, but there are other reasons for it. I mean, assuming that the rabbis don't know where it was located, assuming that the archaeologists don't know.
Assuming that those who took over the area didn't know.
Right.
And therefore, I mean, think about the occupation of the Temple Mount now and the fact that Jews are not given free access to it. They cannot go up there to worship. They can't pray. Well, technically they can pray up there, but the police don't like it because it causes trouble.
Right.
Legally, they can. But you and I have been up there with a number of wonderful Jewish guides, and they try not to go too far in because using those descriptions. One particular guide that we think is one of the Kuti was telling us that he has taken those descriptions and other sources and figured out how far in he can go because they don't know where on the actual mount itself the Holy of Holies stood. Right.
Well, they've identified one, what looks like a step. Okay, the first step leading up to the actual
Temple Mount.
Central part of the Temple Mount, where the Dome of the Rock stands, was actually the original wall.
Right.
Around the Temple Mount.
So he feels comfortable going up to that.
Right. But
beyond that, he won't go.
Exactly. we were, as Christians, we're not bound by this. I mean, our Jewish guides, our Orthodox Jewish guides, not to be confused with the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox. Those are the guys who all dress in black.
No, these are
our Orthodox guides. They'll take us up to the Temple Mount, but they would not go up to that central platform where the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque stand.
Yeshai got you to go up to the door, though. Oh, go up to the door. It's probably open. Go on in.
Yeah. Go, knock on it. So, I knocked on the door, and I could hear them praying inside the Dome of the Rock.
Yeah.
Probably good that nobody answered. I don't think that would have gone well. But Yeshai, Derek, it's probably fine. Go ahead. But again, we've got written records from the 1st century A.D., Josephus in particular, but also Philo of Byblos, I believe. One of the Philos. There's a Philo of Alexandria. I think Byblos. Anyway, 1st century. And you would think that there would have been some clue in one of their writings or in some of the rabbinic writings that date back to the 1st or 2nd century that would have placed it on the city of David rather than on the temple or another location somewhere near the Temple Mount.
I will tell you also, there's a lot of archaeological digging going on in the city of David, and I suspect that if any discoveries had been made that indicated in any way, shape, or form that there might have been a temple there, they would have abandoned that area, roped it off, not allowed anybody in.
Yeah. And just from a spiritual standpoint, the fact that there's so much anger and violence that has taken place over the years over the Temple Mount itself suggests that the spirit realm knows where that temple was located.
And does it matter if you and I understand exactly where it stood? No, not really. We know that whole area is, we believe, Derek and I believe, as does Carl Gallups and many others, that is the spiritual home of the true divine assembly. We no longer need a temple. We don't.
Right. Yep.
So does it matter that we can't build a temple there? No, but I do think that there are those who would love to see a return to that, because there seems to be an understanding, and I think a misunderstanding, that Jesus won't return until it's there.
Yeah. When we talk about the third temple and certain political movements in Israel that are pushing for it, it's not because we think that it needs to be there. We don't. As Christians, we don't need that. We've got a high priest who is next to the Father in heaven already. But it is to let us know and just be aware of the political situation on the ground with religious Jews and what they see as necessary. And also the political situation, because for some, it's just a nationalistic thing more than it is a religious thing.
I think so too. Well, great question.
Yeah, many of our Jewish friends in Israel, by the way, and we hear this also from Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat, believe, hey, look, we've got the synagogues. We don't need the temple anymore. Besides, if we had a temple that took the place of the Dome of the Rock, it would mean World War III, and we don't want that. So there are a lot of Jews in Israel, majority, who don't think the third temple should be a goal.
So. Now, does it mean that they can't set up a tabernacle in the wilderness? No. Why couldn't they?
Good point. So thank you for those questions. We'll have a couple more tomorrow on our Gilbert House Fellowship Bible Study. And
tomorrow night on VFTB.
Tomorrow night on A View from the Bunker, it is Ali Siadatan coming back. He's become one of our favorite guests and a very enlightening guest. We talk about Israel and how Israel in 1948 was, in fact, the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. This is not a fake Israel. And what does it mean then, assuming that this is the literal fulfillment of prophecy?
And I love Ali Siadatan because he comes from a Persian perspective.
Right, yeah.
He's Christian.
He is Christian, and he talks about, in previous discussion, he shares his testimony as to what it was about Bible prophecy that led him to Bible prophecy, but also the UFO phenomenon. And researching that and looking at Ezekiel 38 and 39, that kind of led him to accept Jesus Christ. So, he'll be the guest tomorrow night, and I think you will find it to be another edifying discussion with Ali. Upcoming events, the Inspiring Women webinar coming up in just a couple of weekends, October 4th through 6th.
And you can register for that. Use Gilbert10, Gilbert10 as your promo code to get 10% off the registration. 10% off,
and that's off the already reduced early bird discount, which continues through the end of September.
Oh, does it? Through the end of September? That's a long early bird.
Yeah. So through September 30th, if you register, instead of $59, it's $39 plus another 10% off with the promo code Gilbert10. And you sign up at hearthewatchmen.com. That's plural, hearthewatchmen.com.
There you go.
Our Solidarity Mission, as we mentioned, canceled the Christmas in Branson Prophecy Conference. I saw Bob Ulrich, Gary Stearman, Mondo Gonzalez released a video this week talking about it. They've got more than 900 people have signed up for this already.
I know. And the hotel rooms at the site, I think, are all taken.
All sold out.
But there are lots of hotels in Branson.
Oh,
lots of them.
Yeah. So sadly, staying at the Chateau on the lake is not possible at this point if you haven't signed up yet, but plenty of hotel rooms in Branson. And with this speaker lineup, my goodness, Bill Salas, who we mentioned previously, L.A. Marzulli, Mondo Gonzalez, Billy Crone, Dr. Ken Johnson, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, Alex Newman, Josh Peck, Doug Hershey, Brandon Holthouse, Olivier Melnick. Oh, yeah, Derek Gilbert, too. I heard he's kind of crazy.
He is kind of crazy.
So anyway, you can sign up for that at Branson Christmas Prophecy Conference.com. Branson Christmas Prophecy, or just follow the link we've got in the calendar section at our app. Just follow that link rather than try to remember the URL. So yeah, I guess that's it. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Please do.
And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for Grace and Glory in the house. Bye-bye, everybody.
P.I.D. Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @P.I.D. Radio or the P.I.D. Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.